Hi there, this is Matt Allington, and in this video I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Microsoft Power BI Dataflows. So here I am at powerbi.com and I'm currently in my workspace. Note that there is no sign of Dataflows here. You'll see it here in a second. For a Dataflow to work, you must have an app workspace, which implies you must have a pro account. So I'm going to create a new app workspace. I'm going to use the new improved workspaces because that's really the future. So let me call this Dataflow demo workspace. Okay, and I'll just click save. Won't worry too much about that. Now, the first time I did this, I got a little bit confused. So here we've got data flows. It says you've got no data flows, but I can't find anywhere here that I can actually create a data flow. So I was ripping my hair out, and then what I did on a bit of a hunch actually was I got a workbook. So this is a PBIX file connected to the same account. So I'm going to publish this. When I go to publish, there's my data flow app workspace. So I'm publishing this up there now. So this is just an AdventureWorks sample file that I use for a lot of my blogs and articles. Okay, so let's go and have a look. So here we are, data flow. I still have no data flows, but now when I click up here, I have this data flows preview. So, and I also have this menu here. So to me, something seems a bit weird. Maybe this will change over time. I would expect I should be able to create a data flow without having to load an initial data set. Okay, so now I'm going to go create a data flow, and I have an option here to bring in data flows from other entities, but this is an intro, so let me just create a new entity. Now, some of these terms are a little bit strange for business people. You know, what's a common data model and what's an entity and all those sorts of things. But an entity is just a generic name for customers or products or some of these standard tables of data that we use inside our analytics. Okay, so I'm going to add a new entity, and I'm just for demo purposes, I'm going to bring in an Excel file. Now this Excel file I'm going to load is actually sitting on a PC at home at my house. The PC is connected to powerbi.com via a gateway, and so therefore the file will be accessible to me from powerbi.com. So let me go ahead and do that. So click Excel. So here is the path to the Excel file. This is my PC, the gateway that is already configured. And I need to log on using my computer name and password. Let me just see whether that works automatically. So I'll click Next. So it seems that it's remembered the credentials from a previous time I've accessed this. And so now it's just Power Query. So notice the Power Query branding up here. So now I can come in here. This is just a very small table. This is a file from a different blog post I wrote previously. So I'll just connect to that table, click Next. You can see this is the familiar Power Query experience in a web view. Notice I've got this warning message down here. I noticed when I was just preparing for this, when I click on this warning, it tells me that there's untyped columns. I like that. I don't see that in the regular Power Query. So I could come in here and just change that to text, and I'll change this one to a whole number. I'll leave it called ideas. There's a few other options here. I'm not going to go into these today, but this map to standard appears to be the integration of the common data model, where Microsoft is trying to provide people a standardized way of structuring their data, which should make things a lot easier in the future, but that's a future video. So I'll just click Done. And here it is. So here's my entity name. Now, so in other words, this is now a table. This is a table of ideas from a single file. And I now need to save, and I'm going to give my data flow a name. So I'll just call it blog demo. And I then get this message saying that the data flow has been created. In this case, it's a Power Query data flow, but it hasn't been refreshed yet. And so I need to refresh that. Now the option to do that is gone, but I can come down here. What I might do, I'll just come now back into my Power BI desktop file, and I can now say create a new one or even an existing one. Say I want to connect to a data flow. I'll leave this warning message on. It's still in development. Click continue. And so here's the blog demo, but notice there's no table visible, and that's because it hasn't been refreshed yet. So I'll come back and I'll go refresh now. So this is now running the data flow for the first time, and that data flow will connect through the gateway to my PC and load the data, and I'm assuming that that has been done. And you can also set up a schedule for refresh. There was the option to do that before. To do it now, I just come down here and say schedule refresh, and then I can, similar to a gateway now, I can set up a schedule so that it keeps this data flow up to date. But for now, it's been refreshed once. So now if I come back to my Power BI desktop file, get data from Dataflows, and there it is, there's my table. So I can connect directly to that table. I can now launch Power Query and do further transformation before the data gets loaded, or indeed I can just go straight ahead and click load, and the data is now being imported into Power BI desktop from my centralized data flow. The other thing that I can do with this is I can use Dataflows to create a query from scratch. So this is my calendar table that I use. So I'm just going to cut and paste that. And what I can do now is go back into powerbi.com. So now I'll go back into my data flow. To do that, I have to come up here, click on data flow, data flows preview. I have a single data flow. And if I click on that single data flow, I've got a single table inside there. So this is one table, and now I can add another entity. In this case, it's going to be my calendar table, which I just copied. Here are the current sources that are available. I'm going to do a blank query and then paste my code. Click next. Once again, the full Power Query experience. I'll call this calendar 2. I'll do this because I'm going to import it into my other workbook. Notice I've got this warning again, which is quite nice. I've got an untyped column. I've made a mistake here in my master calendar table, so I'll change that to text. I also noticed when I did this that when I went ahead and imported the calendar table, I started getting error messages. Now, when I did this on Power BI desktop, it just worked fine because it was an Australian date format, but it's being interpreted as being as a US date format here. And so I discovered that there is an option here where I can change the locale of my data flow. So this locale is automatically set based on your PC, but because it's a data flow, it's an online service, you need to explicitly set the locale as part of the data flow itself. So now I can click done. And so now I've got my calendar table. I need to save it and then refresh it. So it's not until it's been saved and refreshed that data flow will become available to you inside Power BI desktop. So that's done. And now if I go back to Power BI desktop, get data from data flow, and there appears to be just a slight delay, probably a caching issue. So let me just try that again. So what I will do is just come back here, refresh this page. I'm not sure whether it makes a difference or not, but I have found that a couple of these things are required to get the data to appear. So get data from data flows. Okay, and then we have the calendar table. And so this actually takes the whole concept of a calendar table to the next stage. Actually see this error occurring here again. So that's one of those data typing issues which I will need to go back and check. So let me click load. But actually this is a good demo of why data flows can be useful, because you can actually make the changes in one place, and then every workbook that references those changes will get those changes applied. So let me come back here and let's check this data flow. So here it is. We'll go in and edit the entity. And for some reason that didn't stick. Maybe I forgot to click save after I made that change. I guess I can go back and check the video. So click OK and let's hit done. And I have to hit save. Maybe I forgot to do that now. Do another refresh and then I can go back and check whether the data is loading correctly.